Hey everybody, it's Cameron back here at GeeksGambit in beautiful downtown Mentor-on-the-Lake, Ohio. Today I'm stopping by to talk to you about this game I've been waiting for a couple of years now, a game I'm excited to have out on our shelves. That is Ironsworn Starforged. For those of you who aren't familiar with Ironsworn, this is going to be kind of a crash course for you because we're going to talk about both. And let's get right into doing that. So diving right in, folks, let's go ahead and talk about Ironsworn Starforged. But to do that, first I'm going to rewind the clock a little bit to Ironsworn, the original game by Sean Tompkin. Now, I came across this probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I have to admit, I was thoroughly impressed. It was something I had seen reviewed somewhere, and I thought, that kind of looks interesting. It mentioned solo and co-op play, and I said, let me see how this is done. And I went to DriveThruRPG, found the PDF for free. When I downloaded that, after doing a thorough read-through, I went back and purchased everything print on demand as well because I wanted to give this man my money. Now, Sean was an amazing talent. I did a review on this a few years back when I did find it and was thoroughly impressed because I wondered where he'd come from. I'd never seen his name in anything before, and he actually replied to me and my review and said, no, this is my first job. It's for my love of the hobby. I went ahead and did this. I believe his background, if I remember correctly, was in graphic design. And so that would explain the awesome layout that he had throughout the book. But I have seen AAA products and publishers not be able to produce this kind of quality in a finished RPG product. That was Ironsworn. And to be honest with you, he added a bunch of people with this new team, which was kickstarted. I've explained why we don't do much Kickstarter. And I decided not to kickstart this, instead to wait because it was going to be available through publishers, and I wanted to go ahead and order it through my publisher to go ahead and continue to get that book into people's hands, as well as encourage the publishers to continue bringing the book in. Having said that, there were a number of people added to the project, so I was curious how much of Sean's work would be diluted, how much of it would be improved. And I even delayed looking at the book for over a week after I got it because I was hesitant, because I wondered, would it live up to what I remembered of Ironsworn? Would it be as good a product? Would it be better? And I have to tell you, I've looked at it, I've read through it, and I'm not disappointed. The team that he assembled, when I had worked with him well, put together another tremendous product, and I think it's a great game. I think more people should play it. Now, as is always the case, I'm going to tell you how I see it. I don't pull punches. That's one of the reasons I love doing reviews. I remember years ago people told me, well, if they're asked to do a review or they choose to do a review and they read a product and they don't like it, they don't do the review. That's not very helpful in my opinion. If I don't like it, I'm still going to do the review. I will tell you why I don't like it, and I will tell you if it's just a matter of opinion or if there's some reason that it might actually be concrete fact. We don't have that problem with this book. This book is a great game. It's put together very well, high quality, and I'm happy to have it here on the shelves to offer to people and talk to people about the game itself. Now, for those who are wondering, Ironsworn is still available as a free PDF on DriveThruRPG. You can also purchase print-on-demand products for it through DriveThruRPG. Sean, if you are listening, please work with me. Help me get this book at a wholesale or reseller price so I can go ahead and bring it here on the shelves to go ahead and share with folk. It's a tremendous book, Ironsworn, and Ironsworn Starforged is the closest I can get to having it on my shelves, and I'm happy to have that as well. But I would love to carry your other books. And if you put out more, keep us in mind. They are great. Now, having said that, there are some potential drawbacks to Ironsworn Starforged. Ironsworn and Starforged are not necessarily for everybody. No game is. If you are not a creative individual, if you like to just throw dice and kill goblins and go on a meat grinder, dungeon crawl, Ironsworn and Ironsworn Starforged probably are not for you. It is a storytelling game. It is epic adventure. It is some surprises along the way for whoever is running it even. But it is not a hack and slash survival of the biggest die role-playing game. Also, if you are a fan of games of infinite minutia, as we like to say, games like, let's see, Dungeons & Dragons 3 or 3.5, if you are a fan of like GURPS and Hero, where everything's got a stat and everything's got a number, and you can go ahead and drill everything down, and maybe you do some math for the velocity and trajectory of a bullet, Ironsworn Starforged doesn't do any of that. A lot of it is story-based. That's not a negative to the game, that's just telling you what to expect, and if you're looking for those other types of games, there are plenty out there for you. This game is for people who want to tell a story and adventure and have fun with the fiction of the game. It is a fiction-first game, along the lines of Fate, or a game that strongly influenced it, Apocalypse World. So if you're into telling a good story and having the fiction matter more than the rules, this game is definitely for you. However, do not think that it is necessarily rules light or story-centric and doesn't consider the rules. The rules were baked right into the writing of the game, and they do support that style of gameplay. So go ahead and pick it up if you are into that kind of game. Now, I mentioned that Apocalypse World heavily influenced the design behind Ironsworn and Ironsworn Starforged, and that's absolutely true. First of all, look at the base die mechanic. Now, in Apocalypse World, you roll 2d6 and you compare that against a static number. Under 7 is a failure, 7 to 10 is a success, whereas a 10 to 12 would be something akin to a critical success. In Ironsworn and in Starforged, you actually have random difficulty number, which I think is pretty neat. I've tried seeing how to do this in other games before, and I'm not a math guy. I haven't quite figured it out. They've done it in this book, and it works very well. In this game, you're going to determine success or failure on a task, you're going to roll 2d10. Now, you're not going to add those 10-sided dice together. Instead, they're just static numbers. So you roll 2 10-sided dice, and you end up with 7 and a 4. Those are each target numbers. What you're trying to do is succeed by surpassing those target numbers. So you would then roll a d6, you would add your stat, and you would add potentially adds or assets. If your roll, plus its modifiers, succeeds against the 4 but not the 7, because you got a 6, you would have a weak hit. If you rolled 8 or better on both of your rolls, you would get a strong hit. And if neither can surpass a 4, you would have a miss. Simple enough. I think it's a clever mechanic. I think it's done well. And I do like the idea of a random modifier for difficulty. This makes it so you don't have to think, gee, how hard or how easy this is. However, back to the people who like being able to put fiction first, you may have to come up for an explanation for why something is exceedingly difficult or something is exceedingly easy. That's okay if you're here to tell a story and have fun. There is added instruction or recommendation that special things happen when you roll doubles. So if you roll 2d10 and you end up with 2 8s, there's your double. If you surpass and succeed on that roll, something really cool should happen. If you fail on that roll, something ultimately bad should happen. It's a recommendation, it's a suggestion, it is not a hard and fast rule, but I like it. I briefly mentioned earlier that Ironsworn, what drew me in initially was that it had solo and co-op play. How do you do a role-playing game with solo and co-op play? I understand I came up during the 80s and 90s. Games were designed to be run by a dungeon master or game master who would lay out the world and everything around you. And then you would go ahead and make your decision what your characters would do and roll dice, and they would play the bad guys, and that's just how it worked. Now here was a story saying it's going to be solo, so you don't need a DM. You don't even need another player. You can play this on your own. Or co-op, you have a few players but no DM. I have seen a few games attempt this before, and what they basically ended up being was kind of fancy choose-your-own-adventure books, you know. They might have a map and use dice, but they were still relatively linear in progression. This game, however, encourages you to focus on telling the story, and then where something comes up where you need to be presented with a challenge or a choice to be made, you would then use their Oracle table. Or they call it the Oracle. It is essentially a table of random events or reactions or characters. Who doesn't love a good random table? That's also rife for homebrewing your own tables. So something very good to keep in mind there. I have actually played solo, and maybe I'll do some recordings of some of that here later. I've enjoyed it. I haven't felt like I was railroaded at all. I haven't felt like I was cheated at all. I found it very good. I have not tried co-op yet. I have talked to a few people about it. But for us, we're kind of old grognards, so trying to go ahead and get that set up has not worked. Also, my schedule is kind of hectic. We'll see if I get something like that going in the future. But you can absolutely also roll it with a guide, as it's called. Guide replaces DM or GM in this case. Now, I keep talking about fiction first, and we've talked kind of how the game is played and how it's designed to be played. What I haven't talked about is the setting itself. That's another part of the beauty of both Ironsworn and Ironsworn Starforged, is you have kind of a basic idea of what the world would be, but it's very general. This is not a huge campaign module that talks about major cities or historic events or anything. In fact, most of history is kind of lost to history in both games. One of the first steps in starting play is that you will go through a series of questions which you can roll to determine the answers, or you can pick something there, or you could come up with something that you like of your own. And so you get to kind of create the world that is yours and your character and your story is going to be told in. And what's true at your table may not be true at another table. You're coming up with what they call setting truths or campaign truths. You can reutilize these. You could find out that some of the truths that you have defined in the early stages later on during gameplay are not actually as true as we had thought them to be. So the fiction right from the get-go goes ahead and encourages you to make it your own with some basic guidelines. And I promise it is nowhere near as painstaking as Microscope. Characters themselves are relatively simple and straightforward. There's no class or leveling system. Instead, you pick a few different assets which kind of define your character. Assets can be anything from a heirloom sword to a companion wolf to a vehicle. In Starforged, you don't really have those in Ironsworn. So these assets help define your character. They can be improved over time with experience. Also, you can pick up new ones along the way. Again, taking a cue from Apocalypse World, Starforged and Ironsworn both use a track system for several things. A track system for health, a track system for journeying, a track system for accomplishing missions or fulfilling vows, which is very important and core to the game. That track system, you kind of score points along the way, on a chart from, here you're starting at 0 and then you're going up to 10. And then you go ahead and fill those up. And once you believe you have gotten to a certain point, in the story, you will then go ahead and roll to see if you complete that vow, if you fulfill a mission, if you have completed the journey. Success, you have. Failure, you're going to take a few steps back. Makes for interesting storytelling. Remember, success of your character isn't where the story is. Often, it is in the failures and how they deal with them. Ironsworn and Ironsworn Starforged both make use of a momentum track as well. This reminds me of Modiphius's Conan game, where when things are going well, they tend to continue going well for you. When things are going poorly, they can get bad really fast. So as you succeed at things and you do better, you build up your momentum on a track. And those things can be used to add to rolls, to shift a roll one way or another. Using some abilities or assets may actually cost you momentum. You have used supreme efforts and will to accomplish this task. You are now tired and exhausted, so your next challenge may be harder than it normally would. I believe the momentum track is a great addition and does allow for a bit of back and forth in the game itself. Again, the mechanics support the story. If you just want to tell a story, you can tell a story. If you want to tell a story and play a game, Ironsworn and Ironsworn Starforged are going to be able to enable you to do that. Now, I hope to talk more about this game in the future. Let me know in your comments if you've got any questions specifically about the game. I'll answer them as best I can, or if you'd like to see or hear more about the game or other games, go ahead and leave those comments and questions as well. I will take time to read each and every one of them. Also, while you're here, be sure to like, subscribe to the channel. Those comments, those likes, subscriptions really help out a channel that's just starting out like ours. Hey, I hope to see you again soon, but until I do, remember to be well, be safe, and be awesome, both to yourself and one another.